Masechet Yoma, Daf 82. We have a couple of very interesting and relevant topics. The first one is children. Do children have to fast? Are they allowed to fast? Do you have to make them fast? At what age? So that's very important and practical. And then the next Mishnah will be the question I get most often before every Yom Kippur, which is pregnant women and fasting. Okay, so we begin with children, hatinokot, and me'anin otan. Children, you do not afflict them. Well, that's a good law in general, not to torture children. But here it's talking specifically about be Yoma Kippurim. So inui means refers to not eating. So according to this, one does not withhold food from children. Tinok doesn't necessarily mean a baby like it usually does in modern Hebrew. It means anyone under bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. And so there's a machloket whether if a child wants to fast, can they? And generally, when they're under 9, we do not even allow them to fast because it's not healthy. Others say they can. But in any case, we do not require that they fast. Aval. מחנכים אותן לפני שנה ולפני שנתיים, בשביל שיהיו רגילים במצוות. However, we do educate them, we train them 1 or 2 years before so that they will be accustomed to fulfilling mitzvot. You don't want to all of a sudden, when a girl is 12 or when a boy is 13, and they never fasted before, all of a sudden they have to fast. You want to train them and get them into it. Okay, so 1 or 2 years before what? The simple reading of the Mishnah is 1 or 2 years before their bat or bar mitzvah. And lechanech would mean either that they fast for a few hours, or maybe that's what it sounds like. But we'll see the definitions of all these words in the Gemara. Next. Question, why are you saying 1 or 2 years before? If you have to train them 2 years before, then of course you have to train them 1 year before. Why not just say 2 years, right? So it depends on the child. If it's a sickly or weak child, then only 1 year before, right? When a boy is 11 and very weak, he might not be able to. So wait till he's 12 and then he can start training. But if a child is healthy, then even 2 years before you can, which is really the Peshat. The Mishnah is saying 1 or 2 years, assess, figure it out, right? See what the child is capable of doing. Okay, excellent. And next we're going to see 3 opinions. These 3 opinions are actually only 2 different views about the schedule of children. So the first one is Amar Rav Huna. He's talking about a girl. Ben shemone u ben tesha mechanechin oto leshaot. It says oto, but it really was talking about a girl. So if a girl's, when she's 8 and 9 years old, then we delay a few hours. Skip breakfast. Where if you're going to eat at a certain time, push it off, and she should start training a partial fast. Ben Aiser ben Ahat Asre Mashlemin Midrabanan. When the girl is 10 or 11 years old, then she should do a full fast. She doesn't have to midoraita, but the mitzvah of chinuch, of education, is midrabanan. And therefore, as long as she's healthy and she can do it, she should fast. Ben Shtem Esre Mashlemin Midoraita Betinoket. When the girl is 12, then she has to fast a full day, and that would be midoraita. So in other words, there's 2 stages, 8 and 9, partial fast, 10 and 11, full fast midrabanan, and then they're ready. Good, that's Rav Huna. Rav Nachman says the same thing, he agrees, he just says it about a boy. But Rav Nachman Amar, ben tesha ben aser mechanechin oto leshaot. When a boy is, we push everything up 1, 9 or 10 years old, he does a partial fast for a few hours. Ben achat esre ben shetem esre mashlimin midrabanan. When he is 11 and 12, he does a complete fast, even though he's only required midrabanan, so it'll be more lenient if he can't do it. Ben shelosh esre mashlimin midoraita betinok. And when the boy is 13 years old, bar mitzvah, then he's required midoraita to fast. Okay, good. So that's Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, who both have a 2-stage process. We're going to see that according to them, when they read the Mishnah, that it says mechanechin 1 or 2 years before, they're understanding the word chinuch to mean a partial fast, right? Training wheels before you have a full fast. So it's 1 or 2 years before the derabanan fast. We'll see that. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, he has a shorter schedule. Rabbi Yochanan amar hashlamad Rabbanan leka, that there's no requirement at all midrabanan to do a full fast. So the first time they're going to make a full fast is when they're 12 or 13 midoraita. So rather, what's the training 1 or 2 years before? Ben Ayeser, ben Achat Esre mechanechin oto leshaot, ben Shetem Esre mashlemin midoraita. When this is a girl, is 10 or 11, then she will wait a few hours, fast for a few hours, and when she's 12, then she'll do a full one. So there's no stage 2, there's only stage 1. He's a bit more lenient about it.
We skipped the Rabbanan thing.
Skip the full fast midrabanan. There's no such thing as a requiring a full fast midrabanan. I mean, if she wants to, and she's excited about it. Sometimes kids want to show that they can do it. If they're by that age, we would let them, but there's no requirement, not even midrabanan. Okay, good. So that's the two views, and now we're going to ask a question on one side and then a question on the other side. First, a challenge to Rabbi Yochanan. Tanan from our Mishnah. התינוקות, אין מענין אותן ביום הכיפורים, אבל מכין אותן לפני שנה ולפני שנתיים. So children, we don't make them fast, but we train them 1 or 2 years before. So before what? בשלמה לרב הונא ורב נחמן, לפני שנה ולפני שנתיים, לפני שנה לדבריהן. לפני שנתיים לדבריהן. So we can understand the Mishnah according to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, means 1 or 2 years they do a partial fast, before they do a complete fast mid-Rabbanan. Now, the truth is that it's adding words into the Mishnah. Mishnah doesn't even say that. But okay, we can fit the Mishnah, we can fit their view into the Mishnah by assuming that 1 or 2 years of partial fast means 1 or 2 years before they're 9 or 10 years old, before they're 10 years old or 11 years old. Okay, Ella Rabbi Yochanan kashya, but it's a challenge to Rabbi Yochanan because he doesn't have a stage 2. But what does it mean 1 or 2 years before what? And Amar lecha Rabbi Yochanan says, I have a simple answer. My shana or shanatayim samuch lepirkan. My Mishnah says, start training them 1 or 2 years before. It means 1 or 2 years before they become an adult. 1 or 2 years before bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah, which is actually the simple reading of the Mishnah. So really, this was hardly ever really a question to Rabbi Yochanan. It's just that we were, already assumed the reading of the first 2 sages. So we now are reminded that Rabbi Yochanan is actually the Peshat of the Mishnah. And all right, anyway, both sides can understand it. Now we bring a Braita to challenge the other 2 views, the view of the 2 rabbis. Tashema. דתנא רבא בר שמואל, תינוקות אין מענין אותן ביום הכיפורים, אבל מחנכין אותן שנה או שנתיים סמוך לפרקן. In this braita, it's very similar to the Mishnah, except that it adds, we don't afflict them, but we train them 1 or 2 years before they become an adult. Well, that's actually exactly the Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation, the 1 or 2 years before adulthood. I think the reason we went through the exercise before is to actually set up this question against the 2 rabbis. So according to this, training, which we understand to mean partial fast, is 1 or 2 years before Bad and Bat Mitzvah. That's it, only one stage. And there's no such thing as a full fast midrabanan. So we say, Bishlama Rabbi Yochanan, Nicha, Ela, Rab Huna, Rab Nachman, Kashya. How are they going to explain this baraita? There's only 1 or 2 years before, not 3 and 4 years. Amri lach Rabbanan, Mai chinuch nameh dekatane hashlama. And they can answer, you know what, the word chinuch has 2 meanings. It can mean a full fast. It could also mean a partial fast. In this baraita, it means 1 or 2 years before they become an adult, they are trained with a full fast midrabanan. And that's what it means here. Even though in the Mishnah, it means 1 and 2 years before the drabanan fast, they do a partial fast. So it can have both meanings. We question this definition. Does training ever mean a full fast? See, because you're not really training. If you're fully fasting, then why would you call that training? Right? Training means I'm going to run a full marathon. You know what? I'll train with a half marathon. If you're already doing a full marathon, then you're doing it. So v'hatanya eze chinuch hayad agil lechol b'shtei shot machidon to l'shalosh b'shalosh machidon to be'arba. We have a braita that explains if a person usually would eat in the 2nd hour of the day, then push off the breakfast till the 3rd hour. If usually it's in the 3rd, push it off. Let the child feel hungry a little and know that they can handle it and it'll pass. and that would be training. So doesn't that what it means, and not a full fast? Amar Rava bar Ola, terech chinuche havu. Yes, in fact, that is one definition of training, but there's another definition which means also a full fast. It's not the same, but it's only midrabanan, and you could be more lenient if you're not feeling good. Then that is good training to do it that misdoraita, and the strictures are much higher. Okay, good. So that's the end of that discussion. Shulchan Aruch Halacha L'Maaseh says that for both a boy and a girl, they should start doing a full fast when they are 11 years old. And that's the same. So, which means for a girl, it'll only be 1 year of training, and for a boy, 2 years. So that is Shulchan Aruch. All this, of course, only applies to Yom Kippur because it's midoraita. All other fasts of the year are drabanan, and there is no requirement of training. They can just start doing it once they are bat or bat mitzvah. All right, and now to the next Mishnah. Ubara shehiricha machilin ota ad shetashiv da'ata. If a pregnant woman smells food and she has a craving for it, pickles, ice cream, anything, whatever it is, we feed it to her until she feels better, until she recovers. Because we assume she's pregnant. This could be a life-threatening situation to her or to the fetus. And so she knows how she's feeling. She knows if she needs something to feel better. Good. Other people who feel sick, we ask an expert. Go ask a doctor. Does this person need to eat? Is this an emergency? And we follow their advice. If there's no doctor to ask, then ask the person themselves, right? If a person feels like, I need to eat, I can't make it, then we feed them. How much? Until they say it's enough. So we follow a person's own body understanding. Good. That's the Mishnah. Now, Tenor Banan. Now we're talking about not on Yom Kippur. All year round, we're very sensitive to the needs of a pregnant woman. And she smells consecrated meat that only a kohen can eat, and it's not permitted for anyone else to eat it, or a pig, and she says, "Oh, I really want to have that." We try not to feed it to her, so we just take a reed that looks like this. This is maybe used as a spindle. We take a little stick and we dip it in the dish and we give it to her. So it's just she has just a mere taste of it, and maybe that'll be enough. All right, it's just psychological. Okay, if her mind comes down, then good. Okay, we got away with just a little. But if she says, no, I need more, we take some of the gravy and we feed her from some of the gravy. If she's happy with that, fine. If not, she says, no, I really need to eat this pig, otherwise I won't feel well, then we even give her to eat from the fat itself, the meat itself. Because there's only the three big ones that one has to die for, which is idolatry, illicit sexual relationships, and bloodshed. But for anything else, like eating pig, eating non-kosher, eating on Yom Kippur, those are not one of the big three. So if it's a life-threatening emergency, and for a pregnant woman, we're very sensitive that it could be life-threatening. So those people, we try not to, we minimize it, but if in the end they have to eat, then they have to eat. Okay, this phrase, by the way, as a tangent, that we should feed them the gravy and not the meat itself, is quoted by Harambam. And he's dealing with a case that happened in his community in Egypt, where there was a man that was living with a non-Jewish woman. And so everybody said they should separate. And Rambam realized that the guy's not going to separate, and they were living in a society where the Bet Din could not force him to do so. So he said, you know what, we should convert her. Now, really, there's a Mishnah that says if someone's already living together with a non-Jewish woman, you're not allowed to convert them. It's an insincere conversion. You can't do it. But Rambam says, better that the person should have gravy and not meat. Better to violate the more lenient Rabbanan law of doing a conversion, even though we know it's only for marriage. That's better than the person continuing to live with a non-Jew. And so he permitted, against what the community thought, he permitted that conversion. So that's an application. Here it means literally gravy and meat, but it's an application to other cases also where there's a more stringent and less stringent problem that if possible, you should, if one has to be violated, then better to direct it to the less problematic option. Okay, good. So now that we mentioned in general the three big sins that one even has to give up his life for, we ask sources for them. Avodah zarah minalan. How do you know that one has to give up his life rather than worship idolatry? Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Im ne'emar b'chol nafshecha, lama ne'emar b'chol me'odecha. Im ne'emar b'chol me'odecha, lama ne'emar b'chol nafshecha. In the second paragraph of Shema, you have to love God b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha. Why does it say both? How come your first paragraph of Shema, sorry. How come you have to say, but with all of your soul, meaning all of your life, and all of your might, which the rabbis understand to mean money? And if it says money, why do you have to say, why do you have to say both of these? Just take one of them, whichever one is the harder one to do. And you'll know, of course, the easier one to do. So the answer is, some people, their body, meaning their life, is more beloved to them than their money. Most people, right? Most people care about themselves more than their money. So therefore it says you have to worship God and with all of your life. Worship God meaning, and not idolatry. So that means even if you have to give up your life, you have to serve God and not idolatry. That's the source that for Avodah Zarah overrides Pikuach Nefesh. And the other, we're just filling out the Rasha. Sometimes you have a person whose money is more beloved to them than their life. And that's why it says, even even if it's going to cost you money, you still can't worship idolatry. You still have to use it to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, are there really people whose money is more important to them than their lives? Well, there are. When the stock market crashes and people jumped out the window, right? They were so attached to their money they couldn't imagine living without it. Okay, so therefore it says both. Good. Now we have a derivation for one of them, that the pasuk in Shema, worshiping one God and not any others, requires full devotion even of one's life. How about the other two? Giloi arayot u'shfichut damim minalan detanya Rabbi Omer ki kasher yakum ish al re'ahu ur sacho nefesh ken hadavar hazeh. Okay, this is talking about a man who rapes a betrothed woman. We actually mentioned this halacha, happens to be yesterday. In the daf yesterday. So the pasuk says something very interesting, that the woman who is raped gets no punishment. Why? Because it's like the victim of a murder, right? If A kills B, B didn't do anything wrong. They were killed, right? They didn't want to die. So therefore, if a man rapes a betrothed woman, she doesn't get any punishment. Now, nowadays, no one would even think that they would get a punishment, but this was a huge revolution in the times of the Torah. People generally blame the victim, right? Oh, she's defiled now, even though she was forced, even though she was raped, we consider her, she participated in this, even if it's out in the field and she was screaming. So therefore, the Torah says, no, you have to understand people's mindsets. It makes a difference if they're in the city, if they're in the field. Was it coerced? And if it was, she's just the victim. She doesn't get any punishment. Only the man who raped her gets the punishment. Okay, so this was a huge revelation in the times of the Torah, but by times of the rabbis, thankfully, this was understood. So the Gemara asks, what's the comparison? What are we learning from murder to the rape of the betrothed woman? Right? Why is it comparing them? By the way, this pasuk is fascinating in another way, which is it's an explicit comparison between two laws. A lot of times the rabbis make gezerah shavah, this one here is next to that one, but here the Torah itself says this law is like that law. So good, we have good reason to compare them and derive something from the other.
They're both victims. They're both victims.
They're both victims, exactly. Right. That's what we're learning, and so they don't get punished. Obviously, in the case of murder, the person who was killed is dead, so you're not gonna call them suicide or anything. But anyway, that's the point. It's as much as a victim as that. Okay, Ella hareze ba lamed v'nimsa lamed. So now the rabbi is going to say, you know what? These two, the Torah compares these two, and we can compare them in both directions. Even though we're learning something from murder to nadama orasa, we can also learn something the opposite way backwards. And here's how it works. Ma nadama orasa nitana sila benafsho afrotseach. Just like if you see a man who's raping a betrothed woman, and you can save her with his life, you're allowed to kill the man in order to save her as permitted. So too, if you see A going to kill B, you can kill A to save B's life. So that's what we learn in that direction. And in the other direction, just like if someone tells you, I want you to go commit murder or else I'll kill you. You can't do it. You can't kill someone else. You have to give up your own life before murdering someone else. That we know. We'll see in a minute how we know that. But that's the source, and we're going to derive Na'adama Orasa also. If someone says, I want you to go and do this illicit sexual relations, or else I'll kill you. You can't do it. You have to say, sorry, you have to kill me. I will not violate this law. So murder, therefore, we learn from murder to the case of a betrothed woman, the same law. Good. So that's how we know in the case of Nadama Orasa and all Gilui Arayot in general. But to step back, how do we know that murder itself, you have to give up your life before you kill someone else? Maybe not. Maybe I don't want to die. I should go kill that person. Sivaraihi, that you don't need a source for. It's logical. Here's a story. A person came to Rava and said, Amarli Mari Dura'eh. He said, so the person in charge, the mayor of my village, came and said to me, Katle liflanya. I want you to go and kill Peloni, Mr. So-and-so. Katil narach. If you don't do it, I'm going to kill you. And he came to Rava and says, what should I do? Sorry, I don't think this is the answer he wanted. So you have to be killed, and you cannot commit murder. Why? Who said that your blood is redder than his blood? Maybe his blood is redder. In other words, you don't look at, he's a doctor, you're a judge. You don't look at a person what value they are. Who's to judge who has more value than another? Everybody is of infinite value. Everybody's blood is red. And therefore, you cannot take someone else's life to save your own life. And so that's how we know that murder, you have to be killed rather than commit murder. And from there, we derive that illicit sexual relations. Also, one has to die before committing such a crime. All right, good. So that was a tangent regarding other cases where a pregnant woman needs to eat something not kosher, which is permitted in a case if it's life-threatening. Now, two stories. Hahi ubara de orcha. There was a certain pregnant woman, and she smelled some food that wasn't kosher, and she craved it. Atula kamed de Rabbi. They came to the Biuda Nasi, and Amar lehu zilu lehu shula diomad kippurehu. Go and whisper to say, listen, today's Yom Kippur, right? You don't want to eat, do you? So lechu shula ve'ilchisha. So they whispered to her, and she thought about it. She says, okay, you're right, and she felt better. We quote them the pasuk that said about Yirmiyah, even before I formed you, before you were born, when you're in the womb, I knew that you were going to be a special kid. So the whispering seems to be, you're not speaking just to the mother, you're speaking to the fetus. This is, fetus, listen, Yom Kippur, can calm down, right? And so calm down. So sure enough, that fetus, in fact, Rabbi Yochanan, the greatest sage of the Talmud in Eretz Israel, he was born. So you see, there was something special about that baby, even before he was very pious. Good. Now the opposite story. Another pregnant woman, and she smelled something. Yom Kippur. Go whisper to her, today's Yom Kippur, maybe the fetus will calm down. But it didn't accept the whisper. So no, I still want to eat. Kari ala zoru rishaim merachem. So about that baby, we said wicked are evil even from the womb. Right? This baby was insistent on violating Yom Kippur. In fact, mina Shabbetai asar pere, and she gave birth to a man named Shabbetai who hoarded fruit. When it was a famine, he would hoard the fruit, store it, and then when people got hungry, he did some price gouging and inflated the price, like Paro did to his people. And so this, he didn't technically steal, but he took advantage of people's adversity to make money. So therefore, the stories are in some tension to the halacha, because the halacha said it's allowed. You're allowed to eat. If she feels like she needs to eat, this is permitted. We don't want to put her in any danger. And yet it's saying, okay, it's allowed, but there's something about this baby. We'll have to see how they grow up. Okay, very interesting. Now, a sick child. I'm going to go a little further just to finish off the topic.
It's a sick person, not a sick child.
A sick person, right? Anybody sick, we ask the doctor. But it says biki'in, plural, doctors. So what do you need? A whole panel of doctors? How many? Amar biyanai, chole omer sarich, v'rofe omer eno sarich. Shamin la chole. So before we get to how many, Rabbi Yanai gives a principle. Let's say you have a difference of opinion. The sick person says, I need to eat. The doctor says, you're okay, you can make it. We listen to the sick person, even against the doctor. My tama, lev yodea marat nafsho. A person knows the bitterness of his soul. Sometimes you have a feeling, right? The doctor doesn't know what you're experiencing inside, and you just feel like, if I don't eat, I'm not gonna make it. It's not gonna be good. So therefore, it's allowed. Now, peshita. Isn't that obvious? Well, you might have thought maybe a doctor, he's an expert. He knows better than the person. No, we learn from this pasuk, a person knows himself the best. Good. How about the opposite case? Doctor says you better eat, but the person says, I'm fine, I'm feeling good, I don't want to eat. We also listen to the doctor. In other words, we're lenient both ways. Why? Because maybe the person is confused. The person who's sick, he doesn't know, he can't, he doesn't have, his judgment is not fully there, and he thinks he's okay. He wants to be, super pious, but he's putting himself in danger. So you got to listen to the doctor. Don't let people put themselves in danger. All right, so good. Either way, they should eat. Now, Tenan, Cholem achidin oto al pi beki'in. Mishnah said we follow experts, which sounds like two doctors or more. Al pi biki'in al pi atzmo law. From there, it would seem to me that we follow the doctors and not himself. Al pi biki'in al pi baki echad law. Two doctors, but not one. See, so now according to this, we just raised the level. You need two doctors to say you can eat, and we don't trust one doctor, and we don't trust the person himself. This is against everything that we just said in the name of Rabbi Yanai. So but that's what it sounds like from the Mishnah, which says biki'in. So how are we going to explain this? So we say, when do you need biki'in, plural of two doctors? De'amar los las tzarichna. It's when the person himself said, I don't need to eat. Okay, v'lesule al pi baki. Well, in that case, why don't we feed him according to one person? Because you said a doctor against him, he should eat. So why would you ever need two? Oh, so that biki'in plural in the Mishnah must be talking about a case where the person himself says, I don't need to eat, and another doctor says he doesn't need to eat. Now you have two. In that case, to override the person and himself, if you have two other doctors that said to eat, then you eat. That's when you need a panel of two. But or otherwise, if you don't have that, then even one person or even himself, he can eat. So we're explaining when there's a controversy between multiple opinions. Okay, now we ask, Peshita, isn't that obvious? Safek nefashot too. Usfek nefashot la'akel. If you're not sure, some people say yes, some people say no. It's life-threatening, so we're going to be lenient. Why do you have to even mention this case? Oh, maybe it's talking about a case where there's two experts and himself. He says, I don't have to eat. Two doctors said he doesn't have to eat. And on the other hand, you have two doctors said you must eat. Now, in general, we have a rule regarding testimony that 2 is like 100, right? If 2 people said this guy committed murder, even if 100 say no, that's equivalent. 2 is maximum testimony. Or 100 is like 2. And edut. That's regarding testimony, if this person committed a crime or not. But if it's talking about a matter of an assessment, right? How much is something worth? Or is this person sick enough that he needs to eat? How much does he need? And that you go by the majority. Now, that rule of majority regarding assessments, that's regarding monetary things. How much is this house worth? But in this case, because it's a safek nefashot, we're not going to go by the majority, we're going to go by the 2 doctors. So in other words, we need all the Mishnah to say this whole case, because otherwise I would have thought, listen, there's 2 doctors and the guy himself, that's the majority, it's a matter of assessment, I would go by the majority, normally. But if it was a monetary case. But since it's safek nefashot, we'll even go by the 2 doctors that say to eat rather than the 3. Okay, so we're complicating the reading of the Mishnah, but by doing that, we're bringing in lots of other cases. Sometimes they're, in fact, you have someone who's sick and there's different opinions from the doctors about it. So we can follow these guidelines. Now we're going to fit all that back into the Mishnah. The Sefer said if there's no doctors, then he decides himself, and he says if I need to eat, he eats. So since it says that in the Sefer, there must be in the Resha, he says I do need to eat. If the Sefer said he doesn't need to eat, it must be the beginning he said you need to eat, and you just interpreted the Resha as meaning that he said he didn't need to eat. So it doesn't make sense. You know what? There must be a missing clause in the Mishnah. We have to read it as if there's a missing clause that says in the Resha, when is that true that you follow the Biki'in, the Malo Sarich Ani? That's when he says he doesn't need. Aval, Amar Sarich Ani, Encham Biki'in, Tere, Elachad, Amar Lo Sarich Ma'achrin Oto Al Pi Atzmo. If he says I need to eat, and there's no plural doctors, but even if there's one doctor that says not to, we feed him. So that's how we can fit it in. All right, so that's all that opinion. Now the last opinion, Mor Barav Asher Amar. Kol hechad amar sarich ani, afilu ika me'ad amre lo sarich ledideh sham'inan. Shene'amar lev yodea marat nafsho. Says if a person says I need to eat, even if there's 100 doctors that said he's fine, he doesn't need to eat, we listen to the person himself because the pasuk in Mishleh, person knows his own bitterness. Right? This is against the opinion that we just mentioned, that if there's multiple doctors and we don't listen to him, Madhab says no, we always listen to him. Now, how are we going to fit that into the Mishnah? Tanan, im en sham biki'in, machino tomis apiasmo. If there are no other doctors, then we feed him according to when he says he needs to eat. Why do we follow his own opinion? Because there are no doctors. Ha'ika biki'in, but if there are multiple doctors, then we don't feed him. That's against Moed Barav Asher. How are you going to fit that? How are you going to understand the Mishnah? Here's what he says. When is the law of the Mishnah true that you follow doctors? That's the only way he said, I don't need to eat. Then you follow the doctors. But if he says, I need to eat, then there is no experts are comparable to his. It's as if there are no experts. We don't care about any experts. All the doctors in the world can say whatever they want. If he says he needs to eat, then we feed him. Shneimad lev yodea marat nafsho. A person knows himself, and that is the final opinion here before the next Mishnah. So you see that the Gemara is going through a lot of different possibilities and weighing experts versus himself. But in general, you have to do what makes sense. You have to use both experts, but also we have to be extra mahmir when it comes to safek nefashot. We never want a person to put themselves in mortal danger for any law except for the big 3. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.